Rain on the ridge, gold in the dark. They call it the old Spanish treasure cave, like a dare, like a sign nailed to the lip of a story that bites. I pulled off Highway 59 at dusk, where the blacktop unspools between Gravit and Sulphur Springs, and the hills fold into themselves the way secrets do. The parking lot was empty, but for a battered pickup and a wooden cutout of a conquistador whose paint had long since flaked into a crust of mica on the ground. A wind came out of the oaks and made the sign creak. I stood there for a moment, listening to the water moving underground. The cave's mouth isn't dramatic. It's a shadow tucked inside a slope, the kind you could walk past a dozen times without seeing. That feels right for a place people have combed for centuries, convinced there's a fortune just one shovel blade beyond the last. They say the cave has drawn hunters and dreamers since at least 1908, when articles began coaxing tourists to come hear the tale and feel the cool breath of stone. I had come for the last tour of the evening, a legends and ghost stories walk, advertised on a hand-lettered placard. Explorers welcome. The guide, a lovely woman whose name, for the life of me, I can't recall, so I'll call her Kay, met me by the gate. She had the easy voice of someone who knows how to talk you past your fear. Nurses and river guides talk like that too. "We're closing after this one," she said, handing me a hard hat with a dent in the crown. "Storm rolling up from Oklahoma. Nevertheless, the cave will keep us dry." She glanced at the tree line. "Mostly." She clicked on her tour lantern. "More mood than light," she said. "For the ghost part." We followed a narrow path to the entrance, our lanterns making little halos that bounced off limestone teeth. Just inside, the air dropped 20 degrees and rose in a fog that caught the light like breath on a mirror. Kay stopped where the floor leveled, raised her lantern and said, "On this tour, we talk about the things that don't rest easy." Long before Gravit had a name, before there were county lines, people said Spaniards slept here. Some say they hid plunder in these rooms and never left, all that gold pinning them to the dark like a vow. She smiled, the way you do when you're telling a story that you both believe and can't. "So if you feel a tap, if you hear counting, don't be the first to answer. A maze is the word locals use. Not one grand cathedral chamber, but winding corridors that double back and break your sense of north. It's the kind of limestone made when old seas turn to hills, karst, pitted and riven by time's slow rivers. The floor sounded hollow beneath our boots, as if we were walking the attic of the earth, and now and then water ticked somewhere ahead, steady as a metronome. Kay set the pace. In the council room, an oval chamber with a chimney that slipped smoke out to the hills, she lowered the lantern, and the ceiling vanished. "Some of the stories say the last Spaniard left 2 maps," she said. "One pressed into paper, one carved where weather could gnaw it. Folks claim both were found, and neither helped a bit." I could hear the shrug in her voice, a century worth of shrugs. Money was spent, rails laid to haul tailings, men trundling wheelbarrows into blind corners because some old mark on the wall felt like an arrowhead pointing to salvation. The rails rusted, the arrows pointed at each other. The cave stayed rich in rumors and poor in everything else. "That's the legend," she added, "and the ghosts are what we do with the part that won't add up. We move deeper, past mineral curtains thin as onion skin, the so-called bridal veil, then through a slope studded with rimstone like the tiny levees of a drowned city." Kay named the formations as if she were rattling off cousins at a reunion. "Enchanted forest, land of 1,000 lakes." "It's a living cave," she said. "Still growing. We're all just passing through, but some folks can't pass. They circle." The coppery smell of wet rock filled my throat. Somewhere around the 3rd chamber, after the ceiling dipped and the floor widened into a shelf with a trickle of moisture skittering over it, we both heard it. A clink, like a coin tapped against another coin. Kay raised the lantern, and the light turned the dark into a ribbon of mica, fast and silent. We waited. The sound came again, more felt than heard, the sort of noise the ear supplies when the mind expects it. I blamed the lantern glass cooling in the damp air. Kay lifted the hood to check the flame and said, almost to herself, "They say that's the treasure keeping its ledger. On ghost tours, people hear it more often. Maybe the story makes a mouth for the sound." "What do you hear?" I asked. "Water mostly," she said, "and people listening too hard, but sometimes the cave listens back." She took us into a side passage. The walls pinched to shoulder width, and the lantern woke little pockets of darkness that folded back into the rock like doorways. Our boots brushed gravel made from the cave's own bones. Then Kay raised the light and showed me the first mark, a cross carved shallow, with 2 half-circles slung under it like a pair of moons. It might have been 15 years old or 300. Some symbols age without leaving a ring to count. "Weathered?" she said before I could ask. "Old, anyhow. People have made everything out of it but soup. On this tour, we let it be what it wants, a sign left by someone who needed the cave to remember them." "Do you believe?" I spoke. She lifted the lantern higher and looked like she was studying the soot marks around the chimney of a house. "I believe a story long enough told invites company," she said. "Things move in. Echoes. The stubborn parts of people. Past that, we entered a chamber where the floor pitched down to a pool. The surface was still as lacquer, and when Kay tilted the lantern, stone teeth trembled in the water like old men trying not to speak. This was where the cave began to talk back. I felt it in the cartilage behind my ears, the small pressure that says a storm is setting up its camp. The first thunder rolled somewhere above us, padded and slow. Droplets began to stipple the pool. Kay nodded up at the ceiling. "If that gets going, we turn around. This room floods fast." I wanted to ask her if anyone had ever failed to turn around. A question like that unspools other questions, though, and the air didn't want them. We stood listening to the storm's throat clear, and then the coin again, sharp this time, not in the ears but on the stone. Clink, clink. It came from the far side of the pool, where a narrow crack sidled away like a seam in a curtain. Kay's head went toward it as if tugged on a string. "Rocks fracture," she said, but her voice was softer. "Formations drip. You can hear anything you want if you give it a shape. The tale says a soldier was left here to watch the horde and count it in the dark. Some nights he forgets that the counting's over. Do you ever go in there?" I asked. "When the water's low?" she said. "Tonight we won't." We watched as the pool darkened one shade, then another. A little dribble began to chuckle into it from a corner we couldn't reach. The lantern smoked. Kay pinched off a bit of wick, and the light steadied, smaller and truer. Then something brushed my wrist, cold and quick. I jerked and knocked the lantern so it clanged against the wall. The flame skipped, but it held. Kay turned, the light finding the grooves in my knuckles. "Sorry," I said, half laughing. "Just water." The laugh bounced and came back wrong. Like a stranger smiling with my teeth. The cold lingered around my wrist. I looked down, expecting a drop or a smear of mud, but there were marks like someone had pressed 2 fingers there. The skin rose in pale ovals. I rubbed them and felt something softer than fear and harder than sense settle in my chest. I have learned to notice when a place notices me. It's like walking into a room and being measured for a suit. "Time to head back," Kay said. She hadn't seen my wrist, or she had and chose friendliness instead of questions. On the way out, she told me the roll call of seekers. The company men who brought a narrow-gauge track into the rock. The older Spaniard who arrived with 2 maps. The local crews pulled between wages and wonder. The modern visitors who buy a ticket for a Legends and Ghost Story tour and pan for bright pebbles in a trough out front, happy to let the cave stay rich in mystery and take their riches home as photographs. The tours still go 1 hour into one of the Ozarks' biggest question marks, and every year someone decides the answer is hiding one bend deeper. We paused once more in the council room. The chimney made a low, wet breath that put a taste of rain on my tongue. I shivered and told myself it was the cold. Kay lifted her lantern, and in that sudden extra light, I saw a smear on the wall that wasn't soot and wasn't shadow. Two lines crossed with the lower arm longer and beneath them a crescent, faint as a thumbprint. It seemed to glimmer the way some stones do when the lantern catches the mica just so. I blinked, and it was ordinary rock again, limestone with the old ocean still asleep inside it. Kay saw where I was looking and nodded like a teacher who recognizes when a student has finally read the margin notes. "You know the smartest thing the cave ever taught me," she said. "It's patient. People aren't. The treasure, if there ever was a treasure, belongs to patience. The ghosts belong to the rest of us." Back at the mouth, the rain had started in earnest, a fine curtain that made the cedars look like they were painted on wet paper. Kay hung my lantern on a nail. "Storm will drum on the ridge all night," she said. "You'll hear it from town." "Thank you," I said. "For the tour." "Come back in a drought," she said. "The cave speaks different languages when the river's low. The legends do too." In my car, I sat a moment, the heater chuffing at my knees, the defroster drawing clear circles in two fogged ovals like watch faces. The marks on my wrist had faded. I told myself the cave hadn't claimed me for anything, that it hadn't pressed 2 fingers to my pulse to count the beats. However, when I started the engine, the radio came up on a talk show, and for a second, just a second, the speaker's voice resolved into that careful clink, clink, clink like coins counted on stone. I turned it off and let the rain do the talking. I drove north, heading to my home in Knoll, the highway slick and clearing. Behind me, the hills hunched down to listen, and the cave, patient as bedrock and quick as a rumor, kept its ledger in the dark. Somewhere beyond the council room, the seam in the wall unstitched another inch. Somewhere, water carried a small, round thing a little farther and let it fall. Somewhere, centuries long since past, and right on time, someone's ghost traced a cross and a crescent in air that never sees daylight and left the scent of iron on the wrist of a stranger. No treasure came clattering out after me, but the Ozarks are full of fortunes people can't spend yet keep anyway. The hush before a storm, the breath of a living cave, the feeling that some stories choose you. Old Spanish Treasure Cave has been choosing for a long time. It chose soldiers and miners and guides and children with plastic helmets and nervous grins on ghost story nights. It chose me for an hour while the rain made a drum of the ridge. Whether the gold was ever there matters less than the math of listening. The long addition of echoes, still working itself out in the dark. Moreover, if what I heard keeps time by clinking coins, or by water, or by something older, I can't say. I can only tell you the ledger is open, and the cave is patient, and sometimes that's the haunt. Not a face in the shadows, but a story that refuses to die.